record. So thank you for showing up. I'm Jacob, and you are Jackie Cushman, the latest, you're an author of the latest book, Our Broken America.
Yes, Our Broken America, Why Both Sides Need to Stop Ranting and Start Listening.
Yes. So I'm give you a little foreshadowing. Any questions? The question is going to be a mix between about being an author for writing tips and that, also about your latest book, about maybe past books you've written, and also your time at PC since you are alumni at Presbyterian College yourself. So let's get started here. What was Presbyterian College like when you were a student at college?
So for me, it was I love being at PC. It really kind of pushed me to be more outgoing because the teachers that I had Dr. Arnold, as I mentioned, Dr. Chapman, also had Norm Scarborough, I think is retiring or recently retired. But they really, they push you to participate in class. And so for me, that was really great because I had the bad habit of sitting in the back and, not talking. So they made me stand up and talk. So that was really good for me. I made lifelong friends from PC. I had to have one coming to visit me this weekend from North Carolina. So that's really great. I have friends that I've known for decades now. And it was a really good foundation because it was academically challenging. I learned a lot. Also, I had plenty of time for social life and to go out to the fraternity court. But also had the skills that I needed so that when I went to graduate school later, that I was fine and did well, and went on to. I have an MBA in finance, and I have earned the Chartered Financial Analyst designation afterwards. So it was a really good experience.
Cool. That's definitely showing me what I'm being ready for when I continue my college career here. Next, what club or organizations were you a part of while you were at college?
So I was there before there were sororities on campus. So I wasn't a member of a sorority because there weren't any. I was a Sigma Nu little sister, and I still have friends today that were Sigma Nu brothers and little sisters. So that was really great. I was one of the founding members of the Students in Free Enterprise organization. I don't know if is that still around, the Students in Free Enterprise, do you know? Scarborough had that.
It's probably a possibility to start around. It probably ain't.
Yeah, he started that up, and so that I was a member of that. I was in a play, which was really fun. I just did a variety of things. I mean, PC is the right size where you can kind of try a little bit of everything that you want. But I played. I think I had to at that time. We had to take a PE course as part of our curriculum. I'm not sure if you still have to do that nowadays or not. No. So I took tennis for mine, and I wasn't very good, but now, decades later, I actually play tennis a lot, and I love it. So, you never know what skills you might learn during college that you might even pick up later on in life. So those are kind of the things that I did when I was at Presbyterian. I also worked the switchboard, which was as you can't even imagine this nowadays, but we didn't have cell phones, obviously. We had one phone on the hall of each of the halls. So you had like a phone at the end of them. I don't know if they're still there anymore. At the end of the hall, like a phone with a long cord that was probably 10 feet long. And the way you would get to that particular phone in a hall is you call the main number, and then someone, in my case, myself, would answer and say Presbyterian College, and they would tell you where they wanted to be connected, and then you would literally switch them to that particular location. So they could say third floor Belk, or they could say first floor Bailey, or anyway, whatever they wanted, and I would switch them to the right place for the phone. So I did that as well.
Sounds like a blast. So figure out what floor you need to go to, what building.
It wasn't too busy, so it was great. I could actually study while I was there. And I was working and getting paid. I can't remember what it was, but I could also study at the same time. And then after I was finished, the campus police I didn't have a car at the time, so the campus police would be glad to pick me up and either drop me off at my dorm or drop me off at fraternity court if that's where I was heading for the night. So it definitely is a very small community.
Which is pretty nice, being in part of smart communities. You know just about everyone.
Absolutely. You feel like you know a lot of people, but you also, it's not so small. I mean, that you still can meet people on the way. In fact, my husband, who is also a graduate of PC, we never really met, even though we were there at the same time. He lived off campus and I was always on campus. And I think we probably ran across each other, but we were never really close. But we met through mutual friends. And so after college, and if we wouldn't have gone to Presbyterian College, we never would have met because we wouldn't have had those friends that would have introduced us.
Yeah. What was it like graduating from college? Being there, you're doing it 4 years, and then you're walking across that stage. What were you feeling when you walked across it, got your diploma, and what was going through your head?
That's a great question. So I had a great feeling of accomplishment. I really want to graduate with honors, and so part of my story is when I went to Presbyterian the first year, I made the mistake of skipping freshman English. And I took sophomore English from Dr. Rachel Stewart, and let's just say the grade in that particular class was not my best. It's like my worst grade ever. So I had to spend the last year of my college career to make a 4.0 to graduate with honors, which was my goal. So I did that. So I graduated with honors, and I was super happy about that because that was I really had to work hard to get the 4.0. And I remember feeling a lot of accomplishment. But when I graduated, it was in 1988, and jobs were pretty hard to find at that time. So I took a job and didn't really like it. So I decided to go back to graduate school full time at Georgia State. And then I worked part-time at a consulting firm and was able to graduate like in a year and a half. I kind of took extra loads, et cetera. But like I said, it prepared me because I had learned a lot of skills at Presbyterian College, not just the statistics course, which helped a lot, or I loved econ. I loved taking econ classes. Those helped a lot, but also some of the skills in terms of presenting in class and having to defend you have to defend your opinion in class and make sure that you articulate why you believe something. Those skills really came in handy. So I do think Presbyterian College gives you a really solid foundation. So when you graduate, you should feel a lot of accomplishment and know that even when things don't go your way, because life is not full of making things easy. Life is full of ups and downs, is that you just have to, relook at everything and figure out a way forward.
It definitely sounds like life. Definitely sounds like it. So you kind of talked about what you'd done, but what type of jobs did you have after college? Did you enjoy these jobs? Were they good experiences for you for where you are now?
So I have a very varied background. So I got out of Georgia State. When I was in Georgia State, I worked for a consulting firm that did business valuation. So they valued businesses. And that was done for a variety of reasons, either startups or ESOPs or divorces or mergers and acquisitions or a lot of different reasons. But I was really, I really learned a lot in that particular role because you had to look at a lot of different companies and a lot of different industries. So I went from there into wireless. And this is when wireless was, you're gonna laugh, wireless, there weren't, I have a little cell phone, right? A little Apple phone, probably the same, exactly, not very big. And it has more computing power probably than anything that I had computer-wise in the 80s. But when I joined Sterling Cellular, cell phones were really bags. They were the size of briefcases that you carried. If you had one in your car, they were literally installed in your car with a huge antenna. But I helped build out that company. I worked in marketing. I worked in finance. I worked in and did some M&A work for them. And then from there, when they kind of sold everything off, I moved and went to Bell South Cellular. So the same exact type of industry, but a much bigger company. It was a $3 billion company. And I loved working there. It was really fun. I learned a ton. We had LA Cellular, we had Houston Cellular, we had a lot of the in market, a lot of the southern area, and just learned a ton in that role. So yes, I've had some really interesting jobs, but since then, this kind of leads me to my writing career. I had 2 kids. I worked in strategy for a while at Bell South Corp, and quite frankly, the hours that I was putting in, I didn't want to work as many hours as I was working and have 2 small children. So I left Bell South and spent some time at home with the kids, and then have worked part-time doing a variety of things since then. And I still do that today. I'm a consultant for startups now. I've gone through the National Association of Corporate Directors training, and I've served on boards. And then I've written 3 books, and I'm a syndicated columnist. So I've kind of got a very wide range of things that I do.
That definitely sounds like a lot of rage. So we're going into the author side now of things. What was the deciding factor for you to be an author?
I love to read. I mean, when I was little, I would constantly, constantly read, and that was just what our family did. All 4 of us, my sister, my mom, my dad, and I all read. And to me, reading provides you a way to kind of be somewhere else and kind of see something different while you're still in your room. So I really loved it. I've always wanted to be an author. I started writing originally columns. I wrote columns for a long time for a local newspaper. And then I started writing for a syndicated, I'm a syndicated columnist. The Creators Syndicate picks up all of my writing and then syndicates in other places. So you can find me in a lot of small papers across the country. I'm on Town Hall, I'm on Newsmax, you can just Google Jackie Cushman, I pop up. But I started writing because I was watching the election and what was happening. This is under Bush, and it just reminded me so much of what I went through growing up, because my father is Newt Gingrich and was Speaker of the House, and so I just started writing. And from there, I've been doing this, wow, probably for 15 years, maybe a little longer. Can't even remember. But I've written 3 books, and it's been an interesting process because, like they tell you in English, it's true. The shorter you have to write something, the more concise, the harder it actually is. But if you do it often enough, you get better and better, at least in terms of, finding the words in your flow and kind of your voice. But I've really enjoyed it. It's been fun.
So as this is kind of spoiling about your latest book, our Broken America, Why Both Sides Need to Listen, Not Argue. Probably messed up the title. I don't have it in front of me at the moment. Sorry.
It's a long, lengthy title.
Yeah, that's why I'm just going on Broken America, because it's
Exactly.
the big part of it. And
Stick with that. It's good.
yeah, what books have you written beforehand?
So the first one I wrote was called Five Principles for a Successful Life, and it's dream big, work hard, learn every day, enjoy life, and be true to yourself. And I interviewed 34 different people from a wide variety, so a wide range of life. So anywhere from Jon Stewart to President Bill Clinton. I had Rush Limbaugh in there. I mean, like a very, very, very wide range of people, and talked to them about what they found out of those principles to make their life successful. And then also includes some stories from my own life. So it's a smaller book. It's, let me see if I have it around here. I don't think I do. It's a smaller book. It's easy to go through. I did do some research in terms of some of the things like being in flow. It helps you work better. I mean, some kind of basic things that can kind of help people. But that was my first book.
Cool. I may give that a read for myself.
It's a nice, easy, light read. It's not anything. I mean, a lot of these things, I think, especially some of that kind of like that personal development, kind of genre. It's not always like something that's like a lightning bolt, but it's sometimes really helpful to be reminded of things you actually already know, but you're not doing, right? So like, for instance, the dream big one, I'll just take that one, for instance. People know that, but then when they get involved in their day-to-day activity, they start focusing on the actions of the day, right? Like what's happening right now, and they forget to step back and look, okay, especially for college students, right? You're relatively young. Don't think about, okay, where do I want to be in 5, 10, or 15 years? It's hard to step back and remember, this semester may look really hard and rough for you, but if you're looking over 15 years, then it may be worth making a sacrifice now to accomplish something, in the short term. So again, it's not nothing entirely groundbreaking, but it's a good reminder of the basics of life that kind of help you along.
Yes, indeed. Um, so now we're going to your book itself, Our Broken America. What is your opinion on why both sides need to listen instead of arguing each other as it is, because it's so polarized in such a divisive thing, which I agree. They should be listening. They get as common ground as much as possible to make better law that affects everyone and betters a lot of people.
Absolutely. I agree with you clearly. I mean, I started off, and I think the original title of this book was called Ranting and Raving. And then we morphed it into Our Broken America. And remember, this was actually published in late 2019. So it was already bad, but to me, it's only gotten worse since then, right? Because we had the 2020 election and we had the pandemic, and but we have a couple of things that have happened that have kind of put us on this path. One is clearly technology, right? So everyone has a phone in their hand and they can jump on social media and they see things faster, you can spread your opinion faster, you can share things faster. That makes a difference. We used to decades ago have news that was delivered in relatively dry form, either on the newspaper or TV, but it wasn't 24 hours a day. It was the news hour. Now we have 24-hour news and we have a 24-hour news cycle. So it's never ending, which also means that for the distribution outlets, so for instance, cable TV, they need a lot of people to fill up 24 hours a day. I mean, it takes a lot of time to fill up 24 hours a day. So you have a lot of pundits going on and sharing their opinion that looks as if they're sharing facts, but sometimes they're just sharing opinions. So it's this constant, it's a constant challenge. On the social side, what's happened is people have become less religious. That's just a fact overall. There are fewer people that identify with a specific religion than there used to be. You'll now see some people that are more on the liberal side that actually, it's almost as if they traded in a religion for a cause, right? So whether it's climate change or the earth, or that they identify the same kind of moments that they want to change things through their causes as people used to want to connect for religion. And then people have moved a lot. Decades ago, people would pretty much grow up, where, in the area they grew up. They'd go to college, maybe a state away, maybe not. They'd come back or nearby. And so you had families that were knit together that were relatively close. Now you often have families that not only move away, but you may have a family that moves 4 or 5 times in 20 years. And so you just have it's just a different society. And what happens is the first election where we had colors that were consistently identified with parties was the Bush-Gore election. So in that election, which took forever, months there were some challenges, there were court cases. Every day people saw the same colors, blue and red, for Democrats and Republicans, the same ones. Before that, it always switched. And so at that point, it became almost as if people identified parties with colors and parties as their identity versus their ideology or their beliefs. And so now we have people that, and there's a research in my book, and it's been proven that people will judge someone before they meet them on whether or not they like them, depending on if they're in the same party or not. And to me, that's just terribly sad. I mean, we've got to get past this as humans. We have to be able to say, you may be on the opposite party that I am, but I can still like you and be a friend. And unfortunately, that's not where we are right now. Over half of Democrats and Republicans say they don't have a friend in the opposite party. So no wonder we're so polarized, because there's no interaction, very limited interaction between the parties.
I can definitely agree. I was initially from Illinois, but in 7th grade, between the 7th and 8th grade, I moved to South Carolina. And plus, I moved all over Illinois too. Like basically just about each year, I went to a different school for reasons if I either moved or had to go to a different school because special education needs and stuff. But I see like the whole family, cause most of my family is in the north side, and I'm now in the south. So there's a big change. It's like, okay, we're family. We have to go see the family if we want to see them. It's a big travel there. And I also like curiosity. Struggling many times. Like, why don't people on both sides like listen to the pros and cons to each thing when it comes to like hot topic issues like guns and abortion and all this stuff, because there's pros and cons to each thing. You can easily find a middle ground for everyone to get some agreement. It may not please everyone, but in a sense it's not trampling on people's rights, nor is it one side versus the other. You kind of get the purple party in a sense. You get the mix, because you don't get an understanding, you don't go anywhere if you're so divisive all the time.
Yeah, you're exactly right. What happens is you end up in a deadlock constantly, right? You have the one side or the other side constantly pulling apart, and there's no middle ground. Part of the challenge we have is that because we're so polarized geographically, because this is not always true, but this is in general true. So it's not So in general, more of the urban centers are Democratic and more of the rural areas are Republican. And so what happens is you have districts that are very polarized in terms of voters one way or the other. So each of that will elect someone that reflects that particular district, but they're both on polarizing sides, if that makes sense. So then you get the people that are actually making the laws, and they're not the people they're not representing the middle, they're literally representing both sides. And so that's when, to your point, you don't get in discussion about how do you meet, you get in discussion because you're trying to score points with your electorate back home to make sure they appreciate the fact that you're fighting for them and what they believe in. This happened actually before the Civil War as well. They'd often go and actually, after they gave a speech, the legislators in DC would go and make sure that the papers from their hometown were representing them correctly to make sure that they got the press that they wanted back at home. And I write about this in Our Broken America. I write about what happened on the way up to the Civil War. And I mean, people always say, do you think we're heading that way? I don't think we're heading that far. I mean, we're in a very different world. But I do think that we have to figure out how we can live together in a to your point, and be able to listen to each other. And the hard part about that is that people in general like to be right? And they feel good when they're right because it makes them feel like they're important and smart. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to sit still and listen, even when you don't agree with somebody. And not only listen, but actually not just wait to answer them and argue with them, but actually try to understand their point of view. And I try to tell people, just because you understand someone's point of view and you listen to them doesn't mean you necessarily in the end have to agree with them. But just the whole process of listening and someone saying, Jacob, I hear what you're saying and I understand where you're coming from. I mean, it's hugely helpful, and it allows you to create relationships where you can actually get things accomplished.
And that is definitely true. You're looking at, I know so many people since I moved from a more Democratic area to like we're going for the relatively to a more Southern, Republican. And I'm saying I don't shy away from talking about politics with people, my friends and family. I don't shy away from it because I have no issue, talking about it. I see the sides, being on the side where like my father, we live basically most of our money we live off is disability money. Most of our money comes from. So we lived in the poor area of life. So I understand that part. So okay, people like there's no social mobility when you just like people talk about like, oh, if you hard work, you can definitely go up, but not necessarily truth if depending on circumstances, which people had to do have. But I totally forgot where I was going with this.
No, but your point is you have to be able to listen, understand that. I mean, general experiences aren't everyone's experience, and people's experiences. I mean, people to me deserve the honor of being listened to, right? I mean, it's not that you're trying. And I have many friends that are opposite political party than I am, and I think that's good. Like I don't want to not be friends with them because they don't agree with me. In fact, I like to talk to them because I always learn something, and I may understand something better, or I may still, but at least I have a fuller and richer context, right, on how to understand something. And I think that's really important. That you have to understand that even if you listen and you understand someone else's perspective, it doesn't mean that you agree for it as a policy, but at least you'll be able to write, and at least you have better understanding. And understanding means learning, and learning means a richer life. So it's all part of the process.
That definitely is, again, that whole understanding, which means you know more. So, any advice for those going into writing and or political science?
Great questions. I'm going to take this separately, obviously, because even though I write on politics, it's separate things. I'm going to take the political science one first. So if people are interested in actually working in politics, my suggestion is to volunteer as soon and as often as you can, because you'll never learn as much as you will and when you're on the ground with the campaign. Either side, doesn't matter. So that's my advice for politics. Another thing is nowadays, there's so much good information published. I mean, between Gallup, Rasmussen. I mean, you've got a lot of polling places that would just give you free data that you can look at. So spend some time looking over the information. But definitely, you want to get in a campaign on the ground. Doing the it may be the silly work of handing out leaflets or calling for money, whatever. But it'll be invaluable. You'll learn a ton. for writing, my advice is to just practice because the more you write, the better you'll get. My second piece of advice for writing, it doesn't matter how, we all know now that my grammar is not the best. I've said that. I've said I have an editor, right? I already admitted that. But even if you're excellent, if you have excellent grammar, when you write something and then you read it, what your brain does is it reads what you think you wrote. It doesn't necessarily read what you actually wrote. So I'm saying that for two reasons. One, if you do edit your own work, which we all do, and then you can send it somewhere else, is read it aloud, because it's hard for you to skip things if you actually verbalize it. Whereas if you just read it silently, you might fill in words or punctuation that aren't really there. And so that's the one thing. It sounds silly, but if you read it aloud, you actually can tell sometimes, what's wrong. The second thing I would say is to find someone who will read your work for you, whether that's a friend who's, I had a friend, Beth Burnett Balga, who was at PC with me, and she was an English major, and she's really good at English, obviously, but she would read my papers and edit them for me, because that was not something I was good at. So find someone else, even if you are good at it, you still need someone else to edit your work. So that's what I would say. And the last part is, I would say, and this is hard. I have to constantly work at it, but try to be as honest and open in your writing as you can be, but never use your writing to hurt others. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but it's kind of like do unto others as you want them to do unto you. So, I'm not a big fan of people that write, books, shredding up someone's, their life, because I just think doesn't bring good in the world. So use your, as with all powers, use your power for good and get someone else to edit your work.
Definitely concur to reading out loud your own work, because I know I'm not the greatest at grammar, and I sit there, I reread. It's like, oh, that does not make sense. I need to work on that little passage there. So that is definitely, for any writer out there, definitely a good thing to go into. So we're gonna cop back. Oh, got a couple more questions here for you. What is your hope for people of future generations when it comes to politics? Why?
So I would have, okay, so there's this great movie, and I'm going to answer this question eventually, don't worry. There's a great movie out that, so who's the guy that's in The Office, that starred in The Office, the series The Office? Anyway, he's the lead. Jon Stewart actually produced it and I think directed it. It's called Irresistible. So Irresistible is a movie. It's on Amazon Prime. I would suggest anyone to go watch it, especially political science majors. But the reason I'm telling you to go watch this is this movie is about a small town in middle America, Wisconsin, they say, in a mayor's race. And it ends up during this process that both the National Democratic Party and the National Republican Party get involved in this race. So that means they send in consultants, they send in, people with technology people, they send in monies, they have super PACs, all this stuff is just like nuts and crazy. And I'm not gonna tell you how it ends because it's worth the watch, but what it reminds me is that our election system doesn't work very well. And I say that because there's a lot of money being spent. There's a lot of not understanding the actual issues, and there's a lot of consultants making a ton of money. So what I would hope for future generations and politics is that they understand and act on the basis of that our country is best when its citizens are active, and that being active doesn't mean that you watch somebody on a cable TV show and decide to vote however that they say. Being active means being involved in your community, having knowledge of the issues and making sure that you make a difference where you live. So, unfortunately, it's very easy in our country for people to sit back and let information come to them. But very often the information that comes to you, not you personally, but to someone, comes to them because of advertisements or because of commercials or because of something else, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate information. So my hope would be that we'd have an active, involved citizenry that actually takes their responsibility and make sure they're informed before their vote.
Which is, I think a good requirement, when people come to voting. You want to know, what are the issues, that's plaguing, since, here we have the right to vote, our nation or our United States, knowing that versus, knowing what's local, what's not, because, local politics is much different from federal politics or state to government. So you have all that. So, being informed of what's going on, definitely a wise idea.
Yeah. And I think the average voter, and again, go watch Irresistible. It's unbelievable. But I think the average person has very little idea how much money and data drive the election process. And I don't think it's a good thing. I'm not saying that like it's a good thing. I just think it's a fact. And I think once you realize how much is out there, I think it does kind of open your eyes, and it makes you become a little skeptical about everything you see.
I definitely agree. Having run your campaign just on social media, on tweets, Instagram, whatever, ads, that's either pro you and against your opponents. I think being more down to earth with your people that you're trying to win the votes from. I think the good example of that was one of the presidents. I'm not remember exactly what president did a whole radio talk show where he talked, which I'm granted earlier days, but
yeah. If you're talking about FDR did the fireside chats is what they were labeled, right? So is that what you're thinking of? And there were radio shows, and that's interesting. Actually, I talk about that in Our Broken America as well. And that was the first time, but it was a to your point. He wanted to make direct connection with the people, with the American people. So prior to that, everything had been put out through the reporters, and then the reporters would report what they wanted. So this was the first time he had like a direct connection just to the people themselves. So that was a dramatic change in communication strategy. So I'm glad you picked that up. That's good.
Because you're being down to earth, you're being direct to the people. I think it works in the theoretical theory of it working, because you let people know what's going on. You're not hiding anything per se. You're just being direct, letting people know what's going on, and you don't want other people to twist your words.
Right.
Or you just how many times have I seen someone tweet something or say something and it could be twisted against them.
Right. Or grab the middle part of it, not the whole, right? Not
the whole thing, just a little segment, a 0.2-second segment of something, and not the whole what led it up, what's the aftermath, why was it said. And I agree to that, because you don't want people twisting your own words. If you want to twist your own words, just be you yourself twisting them. I want to head back real quick about college experience. Do you have any crazy stories about being a college student here at Presbyterian College?
Oh my God. All I'm going to say about that is I'm really glad that we didn't have these little devices when I was around. And that is all I'm going to say.
So I'm going to take a gander.
Yes. Actually, I've got one good one. So is there still, so there was, when I was there was Bailey, and then there was a small building, and there was what was like a platform. It was like a 3-foot tall platform that was occasionally used for things. It's probably gone by now.
Most likely.
Yeah. So anyway, so it was probably a 15 by 15 kind of round platform. So I had a VW Bug car, because it's like the right. And for some reason, some of the students decided to pick up my car and put it on top of that platform one night. And so I woke up the next day and it was on top. And they called it the Jock Rock. I'm not sure what they called it that. But anyway, so that was kind of entertaining, and I had to figure out how to get it down. But yes,
that definitely is a crazy story.
That's a crazy story.
Are you thankful for any? I know you said this. You are thankful for teachers and staff and whatnot. Can you just in case they decide to tune into this video or not? Who are you thankful for? From college. Even after.
Yeah. So Emerald, as I mentioned earlier, but I'll mention him again because he was the most influential person. Professor at PC was Dr. Chapman. So Dr. Chapman was an economics professor. He was my advisor. And he really pushed me as hard, to study more and to do better. and he really made a huge impact on my life. And I remember when he talked, my parents came one parents weekend, and he was giving me a hard time because he told my mom, he goes, she runs on 6 cylinders, but she's really an 8, because he was like, she needs to work a little harder, like she could do more. So I really, really, really enjoyed him. And then I'm very thankful for the really close friends that I made at Presbyterian College. Suzanne Stone's coming to see me this weekend. Anne Marie Ramsey's coming this summer. She lives out in Oregon. Beth Burnett Vogel, who I mentioned earlier, helped me on in English, and her husband still does my taxes. So I'm very thankful to have those ties to BC. And I'm also really thankful for some of the recent graduates. Ben Ewing, who's actually a relatively recent graduate and was featured in a New York Times article about his wedding, is a teacher at Pace Academy, where my son went. And so it's kind of nice to have those generational connections to Presbyterian College. And I'm just really thankful that I had the opportunity to go somewhere where it taught me how to learn, and didn't teach me everything, but taught me that I could learn and how to learn, and also reinforced what I think my husband and I do with our lives, is that commitment to serving others and to giving back to the community. I know that servant leadership is a big part of the Presbyterian College kind of focus, and making sure that you give back. And I think that's really important in today's world as well.
I definitely agree. My whole thing for my job is become a guidance counselor, so I can give back what I was given to other people in need. So
that's great. That's great.
I live my life by giving back what I've gotten from others back to other people.
Well, that's great. And I mean, and if you do become a guidance counselor, I think it's also, they're often, my friend Suzanne's actually, she's not a guidance counselor, but she's a counselor. It takes someone that really has been through a lot to be able to really empathize and help others. But then that makes such a difference, because they realize that you actually can see them and hear them and don't judge them, which I think is so important in that relationship. So good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I worked hard to get my Eagle rank, which I did a school supply drive for myself for the middle school I joined in 8th grade, because I had nothing besides this little binder, a pencil about like yay big. That was it. And so they gave me everything I had, one sheet of paper also. So they gave me paper, notebooks, pencils, pens, highlighters, so I can be able to accurately be successful in 8th grade.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. And I'm thankful for them. That's why I gave back what they gave me, plus some.
That's so great. Good for you.
And
that's great.
So I understand the whole thing of, giving back, what is due and things. So thank you for showing up for my small 40-minute interview.
Yeah, this has been fun. And I was so happy to have you on last week when we did the talk, but I'm glad, I'm glad to spend the time with you. I really admire you for reaching out and for setting this up, and have the initiative to get it done. So you know what? Good for you. So glad to do it.
Yeah. Thank you. Hopefully you have a good day. You be safe with COVID and all. Absolutely. And again, I'll be looking forward to reading your books when I get a chance to get around reading them.
And go watch Irresistible, and most importantly, go Hose, go Blue Hose.
Yes. Thank you. You have a good day.
Thanks, Jacob. You too.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in. This is Jacob signing off from the BlueTube channel, and you guys have a good day. See you guys real soon. Bye.